September 11th, 2001. You know, it's a date that's just etched into the memory of the entire world. But when you get past the headlines, past the memorials, what actually went down, minute by minute, on that clear Tuesday morning? Well, that's what we're going to do. Let's break it all down.
You know, the story of that day it's incredibly complex and it's full of tragedy. But you can actually boil it down to just a few stark numbers. And it all starts with this one, 4. Just 4 commercial airliners taking off on what were supposed to be totally routine flights that would never, ever reach their destinations.
And then you've got this number, 19. That's how many hijackers boarded those 4 planes, each one with an absolutely devastating plan in mind.
So you have 4 planes and 19 hijackers. And they all converge on one single morning. A morning that would completely rewrite the history of the 21st century. I mean, it was a day that changed everything.
Okay, so before we can really dive into the timeline, we've got to be clear on the basics, right? At its very core, what was 9/11?
So, it was a coordinated terrorist attack all planned out by the extremist group Al-Qaeda. But here's the really crucial part, the thing that made it so unbelievably terrifying and effective. It was the method. They took regular civilian airplanes, full of passengers, mind you, and turned them into guided missiles. And they aimed them right at the heart of America's economic and military power. And this whole devastating plan, it unfolded with just shocking speed. Let's walk through the timeline of how, in just 102 minutes, the world was changed forever.
It all started at 8:46 a.m. That's when American Airlines Flight 11 slammed right into the North Tower of the World Trade Center. At first, a lot of people thought it must have been a terrible, terrible accident. But then, just 17 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., United Flight 175 hits the South Tower. And that's when it became clear this was deliberate. The attack kept going. At 9:37, Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, the very center of the U.S. military. And then finally, at 10:03, the 4th plane, Flight 93, went down in a field in Pennsylvania. And that plane's story, well, it's a story of tragedy for sure, but also one of just incredible bravery.
And that second hit, that was the key moment. See, it happened live on TV. The news cameras were already focused on the burning North Tower. So for millions of people watching all over the world, that was the moment. That gut-wrenching realization that, no, this wasn't an accident. This was an attack. But the horror, it was far from over. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower, which had been weakened by those intense jet fuel fires, just imploded. It collapsed into itself in only 10 seconds. Then, a little later, at 10:28, the North Tower did the exact same thing. Just like that, those iconic symbols of the New York skyline were gone, replaced by this monstrous cloud of dust and debris that just swallowed Lower Manhattan. So, when you look past the timeline and the collapsing buildings, the real story of 9/11 is, of course, the absolutely staggering human cost. The final number of people killed was nearly 3,000. I mean, to put that into perspective, it was the single deadliest terrorist attack in all of human history. It claimed more lives on American soil than even the attack on Pearl Harbor. And, the toll just kept climbing, long after that day was over. Thousands more were injured, and an entire generation of first responders, the heroes who rushed into the danger, they would suffer for years and years from these awful illnesses, all because of the toxic dust they breathed in at Ground Zero. And the victims themselves, they came from over 90 different countries. This was a truly global tragedy. But amidst all of that unimaginable tragedy, there was this story of just incredible heroism unfolding in the sky over Pennsylvania. On Flight 93, the passengers and crew, they started making phone calls to their loved ones. And through those calls, they found out what was happening in New York and in Washington. They realized they were part of the same exact plot. So they made this incredibly courageous choice. They decided to fight back. And their struggle, it forced the plane down into an empty field. It prevented a 4th devastating strike on a target that was probably somewhere in Washington, D.C. In their final moments, they became heroes who saved, without a doubt, countless lives.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Who was behind this meticulously planned attack, and why?
Well, it didn't take long for the intelligence community to figure out who the masterminds were. The attack was planned and carried out by Al-Qaeda, this global militant extremist network. And it was led by Osama bin Laden, who would actually come out of hiding later and proudly claim responsibility for it all.
But what was their motivation? What did they want? Well, their goals were really as symbolic as their targets.
They wanted to strike right at the heart of American economic and military power. They wanted to spread fear and chaos on a global scale. And they wanted to make a huge, violent political statement against U.S. foreign policy.
Now, the attacks of that morning didn't just end when the dust finally settled. Not at all. Their consequences would fundamentally reshape our entire world.
The aftermath was immediate, and it was so far-reaching. The attacks launched the global war on terror, which led to the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan to take down al-Qaeda's bases. How we all travel was transformed, like overnight. Airport security became this really complex, intrusive process we all know now. Geopolitically, American foreign policy just entered a whole new era, completely dominated by counterterrorism. And back on the ground in New York, the long, painful process of rebuilding began, which eventually gave us the 9/11 Memorial and the new One World Trade Center.
And hey, just think about something as simple as flying. The world can really be split into a before and an after. Before 9/11, airport security was basically a quick formality. After, we entered the world we all live in today. Full-body scans, super strict rules about liquids, and really intensive screening. It's a change that has literally touched the lives of billions and billions of travelers.
And all of this brings us back to today. You know, the events of that morning, they might be history now, but its shockwaves are still shaping our present. I mean, from the wars that are fought, to the way we all travel, to the debates we have about privacy. So the real question isn't just what happened on that day, it's how, more than 20 years later, our entire world is still living in the shadow of September 11.